Hi, I'm Esther Ha, Executive Chef of Momofuku Co. And I'm going to show you how to do our sliced beef dish on the tasting menu right now. So we get our strip loins in from Happy Valley Meat Company. It's a collective out in Pennsylvania, in Happy Valley, Pennsylvania. Every time they come in, we'll put a tag on it with the date. So this one came in January 20th. And it's been sitting in our meat case where it just filters cold air at a controlled temperature since then. So we're gonna break this down. Essentially what we're trying to get is just the eye of the meat. And then everything else, the fat we'll use for the souffle. That's an accompaniment to the sliced beef course. Just cleaning off all the fat around it. The rib bones hold it all together. So you're essentially just filleting the steak off. I think everyone has their own way of breaking down proteins. You kind of, throughout the years and like with every time you do it, you develop your own system, I'd say. I think I've just found this to be the easiest way and the cleanest and the fastest, honestly. Kind of comes off like a fish. I know that's like a weird metaphor for breaking down steak, but it comes off pretty clean. And then you're left with this, which is the eye of the strip loin, and we're just gonna clean it up. So because it's dry aged, this back end is actually very tough and funky. You don't wanna eat that. Same with this side. For what we're using this beef for, we don't want any bits of fat or sinew left on the steak. Clean this off. Yeah, so we'll use the fat that I'm peeling off here and render it out for the souffle and also to finish the beef. Yeah, so we have our dry aging case right behind me. We'll try to dry age as much protein as possible. This past year we started dry aging our fish. I think there's actually one in there right now. But it helps intensify all the flavor of whatever protein's in there. I think some of our meats are some of the best in the city because of the dry aging case. It's just so much more controlled and it's a much more controlled environment than trying to dry age in a walk-in or a normal fridge of any sort. So this looks good. I'm gonna wrap this up. We'll put it in the freezer, let it set up, slice it super thin, and yeah, get to it. This guy here is called a Conroe grill. It's a pretty traditional Japanese charcoal grill. The charcoal that we use here is called benzai. So each brick of charcoal has a hole running through it that allows better airflow. So more oxygen in the fire means a hotter burn. That's what we're looking for. So we're gonna render the fat to use as the base for the smoked onion souffle. And then a little bit of water in the pot with it helps it start rendering. All right, so we're gonna make the souffle. It's a smoked onion souffle. It gets topped off with a smoked onion and cheese cream, and it gets served with the sliced beef dish. So this souffle is essentially a cheese souffle, so it's twice baked. So we'll make one base first and cook it in a water bath. Let it cool down, portion it, and then bake it again with a bit of that cream on top of it. So we have the egg whites going here. I'm gonna take it to a pretty stiff peak. So the origin of this dish is actually a pretty fun one. During the pandemic, we reopened the bar side and we're doing pizzas, classic tasting menus for a bit, and wanted to have a little bit more fun with the menu. So we introduced this item called a mystery dish. So on the menu, it read as just mystery, and there was a price point on there. Guests didn't know what they were getting. It could have been sweet, savory, a salad. We had a sous chef. He drew inspiration from his time during the pandemic with his brother in North Carolina. He had gone to a barbecue restaurant called Skylight Inn, I believe, and wanted to make a souffle al minute during bar service that kind of resembled like this corner cut of a cornbread where you get the crust, you get like the little bits of pork fat worked into it, but wanted it to be vegetarian. So the first iteration of this souffle was actually a sweet potato hoisin souffle with a bit of smoked salt, just dusted around the base of the bowl. And we've taken that idea and turned it into the bun for the mid-meal cheeseburger course. While that's going, I'm going to grease up little ramekins. And then in the bowl here, I have a souffle base that we've made with that rendered beef fat we did earlier. A little bit of smoked onion oil. There's flour and egg yolks going in here. Great. Biggest thing with meringue-based anything, you don't want to punch too much air out of the meringue. I'm looking for a homogeneous mixture without lumps of meringue still left in here. If there are lumps and they get baked off that way, it'll come off looking like mortadella. When you cut into it, you'll see like chunks of white throughout the cake, and that's not what we want. It goes straight into the grease tins. And then give each of these a gentle tap. And then because it is a souffle, it's gonna get a little water bath just until they float. That's hot. So we're gonna let those rest for a little bit. And as they rest, they're gonna just deflate right back into the tin. We'll pop them out and portion them. So the souffles deflated. They should just pop out. So each of these is 4 portions. Pretty delicate. So this is gonna get topped off. This is the smoked cream, smoked onion and cheese cream. They're gonna go back in the oven. So the beef we broke down earlier, we've sliced. This gets a bit of beef fat. These slices are still frozen so that when we put it on the grill, they're not gonna cook, they're just gonna thaw out. So that beef is gonna get brushed. We call this a bulldog sauce. Bulldog is Japan's answer to the A1 sauce. It's pretty much ketchup based with a bit of oyster sauce, Worcestershire and brown sugar. Warm that through in the oven. This is, it's called Schlossberger Alt. It's a aged Swiss cheese. So on the bottom of the plate, there's a tarragon puree. So this is tarragon, some heavy cream, onions, and then gets finished with a bit of cider vinegar and Japanese hot mustard. It's gonna get a couple slices of the cheese. It's a little finishing salt on the beef. one final sear. And the souffles. Bit of crispy shallot. I think this dish resonates a lot with the identity of Co. Even if we are a Michelin-starred restaurant. A lot of the stuff that we do is high-low, whether that's the cold fried chicken, and then we put ranch and caviar on it. This is probably some of the best quality beef I've had in this area that we've taken and cared for 8 weeks in the case. There's a lot of care and attention that goes into every step of the process. But then when you eat it, it eats like a cheeseburger, or it eats like something so familiar, and it's presented in a very unfamiliar manner, which is something I like to do with a lot of our dishes here. I don't know, Max says this is a one-biter. I think it's a bit much for a one-biter. Some souffle. No, nothing wrong with that.